Mrs. Powell, you are one of our first ladies, whether you believe it or not. And so we are so glad that we're in a time now where women are leading the way in so many areas of politics. But I believe that there are many women that were the wives of very powerful political leaders. Can you tell us really the role that women played 30, 40 years ago, especially as they were having to do so many things behind the scenes and in the community as their husbands led the country?
Well, women 30 years ago, as they are today, are the leaders in community. They're the ones that keep the trains running on time, if you will, as far as social issues are concerned. Men in politics are involved in the affairs of the world and the nation. Women who were behind the scenes, of course, were supportive of their husbands and certainly aware of the issues that they were facing, but they were not as active 30 years ago. Usually just as wife of, but as wife of, you can contribute an awful lot to an institution.
As you said, contributing so much to an institution, and we know today bipartisanship is a major challenge for many Americans. And so, as we look at the role of women and we see, have they and should they be crossing party lines to help move our country forward?
Certainly they should. The idea of moving the country forward is, with different parties, you still have to compromise to reach a decision and move forward. You cannot keep opposing views all the time and expect to have any movement. There has to be a coming together at some point. And hopefully women are more apt to do this, I think. Not being a big part of things like that, I don't know, but I think that they're more apt to be willing to concede a point and come to an understanding or an agreement with opposing views. I'm not sure how long that will last, because as they assume more and more leadership, they will become more and more entrenched in their own beliefs and standards and feel obliged to push those forward. So I think that we have to consciously, as women, we have to consciously think about how we come together despite divergent views.
You mentioned divergent views, and we know socialization is a major part of many times how things come together. Mm-hmm. Social engagement, I know, has always been a large part of Washington. Today, do we see that the social engagement is helping to propel the country forward, or do we see that there's not much engagement across party lines?
I think socially there's not as much engagement across party lines as there was in the past. I think people are more entrenched in their ideologies, if you will. There was a time in Washington when business was business and social was something else. I would venture to say there is not really a lot of socializing in Washington these days. It has taken on a whole different tone. Everything is business.
Now, we know that many Democrats would have voted for your husband if he had ran and won the Republican nomination. What was your role during that process, and how did you kind of help to support that as a wife?
I didn't support it at all. It was not anything that I wanted him to do. It was interesting to watch that phenomenon. As I say, it was not anything that I wanted any part of. The support of the country for Colin at that time is what I believe needs to be in politics as a whole. I personally am an independent. I don't vote one party or the other. It is the individual that I am interested in, what they stand for and what they believe in. And that's what was going on when people were interested in Colin. They saw him as a strong leader, and it didn't matter which ideology he had. They knew that he had the strength and the integrity to lead, and he had proven himself as a leader. So that was what was involved there. I was proud of him, but as I say, I had no part in that.
As we know, community is a large part, even as supporting politics. And community leadership has traditionally ran through so many women, have kind of led a lot of those community organizations.
That is true, but that's beginning to change a bit now, too. For many years, I belonged to an international club that was formed, at the end of World War II, when diplomats began to come to the city, and it was to provide them with a social life and to meet each other and come together. And the clubs today exist still today, and they are composed of government wives and education and congressional, and you belong to a club according to what your husband's position is. And so they come together with from different countries and different viewpoints. But I visited the club that I belong to recently. The president is a man. And as women became leaders, the men became the spouses, and they took on spouses' roles. And so the men that belong to that club are very active. And this is a change. There was a time when there wasn't any such thing. There was a great deal of discussion the first time a club was going to admit a man. One man came, I think he was from Austria. He came prepared to fight a battle. I want to join this club, and if you don't let me join this club, I'm going to sue. Well, you don't have to do that. If we think you're a nice enough person, you can belong to our club. And that kind of broke down the barriers. So community-wise and socializing in that way, the lines are beginning to blur. And as women take more active roles in things, men take different roles too. They don't always have to be the head honcho. Sometimes it's the woman. As with those women in Congress, look and see what it is their husbands do as spouses of. They have a role to play too. I was amused. Years ago, there was a female Army black general, and she was made the commander of Fort Belvoir. Her husband, I said to her, "What is Heinz doing?" She said, "Oh, he's the sponsor for the Red Cross." He had assumed all the spouses' roles and was active. You know, as wife of the commander, you are head of all of the community installations on the post. He took on those duties just like I would have if I had been there. So lines blurry, and we'll see things change as we go forward.
As we close, any advice you have for those spouses or those individuals that are women in Congress about how to help our country move forward in very difficult times?
Kindness, understanding, and being willing to listen to other people, being willing to listen, but above all, kindness.
Mrs. Powell, it's been a true pleasure to have you with us today, and we look forward to seeing where our country will go next, if they can follow in great footsteps.
Let's hope so. It's a thing that we have to instill in our children because they're the future. So we have to give them role models to follow. That's the way you move the country forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.